Let's talk Brentford against Liverpool. Liverpool obviously with their first home game of the season. Slot technically with his first home competitive game of the season. It's a big day in Anfield. I'm going to be there. If you see me around, then come say hi. But I wanted to preview it here on the channel first and talk a little bit about the Ipswich game, where Liverpool are going, who's left in the meantime, and what that means overall for the team. Of course, I'm always welcoming your comments below. Let's talk a little bit, first of all, about that first game. I think Ipswich did what a lot of teams are going to try and do this season, and the opposite of what a lot of teams are going to try and do this season. First of all, Ipswich hit Liverpool with a relatively aggressive match-up and therefore press of the players in possession. Now, obviously, they found that that was relatively effective in the first half, but with a couple of adjustments from Slot and probably a little bit more coaching for the players, Liverpool bypassed that relatively quickly and worked out where the space was against Ipswich, and Ipswich weren't really able to switch up. Slot kind of said it himself. It was like, is that really our switch up, or were Ipswich just not able to kind of keep up with the overall fitness of a team that is obviously at an extremely elite level, whereas Ipswich are just entering that elite level? Of course, that doesn't mean Ipswich did anything bad. It just means that we observed something about that team. Of course, on the other side of that, I think there are going to be a couple of sides this season, smart sides, who try to sit back a little bit and say, hey, why don't you come forward to us? We're going to counter-attack on you a little bit. We're going to make life a little bit uncomfortable. And of course, you select which game you do that in, which approach it is. And I'd be interested to see how Liverpool deal with that. We've not really seen Slot against a super deep team yet. We've not really seen Slot against a side that go on then, work us out. Obviously, we've seen a couple of pre-seasons, but that's not quite the same thing. And against a relatively full Brentford team, I'm going to be interested to see how that works out. Of course, they've got a big, bad striker up front, someone that I wouldn't be upset if he was a Liverpool player in the first place. And I also think their two wingers and the way that they will attack, probably Robertson and probably Trent, is going to be interesting to observe. I'm not saying that Trent or Robertson are particularly vulnerable, but what I'm saying is that I think Liverpool, they found a couple of times, like for instance, Delap got out wide and behind Trent, and it worked relatively effectively in that first half when they had a good touch, when they were able to cut inside. That's where they created a lot of their best work. And I still feel like that's where teams are going to attack the soft underbelly of Liverpool, going through the middle in that double pivot. It shouldn't be a thing. Going through the middle and Konate and Van Dijk, or Quansah and Van Dijk, talk about that in a second. Not as effective, so you kind of got to go wide and then cut in. And Liverpool are kind of reducing you to the chances that they allow you to have. Of course, Brentford I actually think is quite a step up. Let's talk a little bit about that Jarell Quansah thing. Slot over the last few days has said, and in a very kind of Dutch way, first of all, loves swearing in his press conferences. I'm a big fan. But secondly, I also know that the Dutch evaluation of things can sometimes sound a little harsh whilst actually just being fairly realistic and honest. He will have relayed that to Quansah. Quansah will understand the context around the situation. And I think Slot said it himself. I've got the quote. It's a relatively interesting quote from Slot right here. There you go. Jarell lost every duel, and many of us lost many duels. He just wasn't happy with those duels in the first half, and Jarell was just one of those. Quansah obviously is a very young player. Obviously is going to be the one that Liverpool get attacked a lot more because Van Dijk and Robertson are pretty scary on the other side. Not insurmountable as a pair, but difficult to face. I think a lot of teams are going to know that this year. You've got Trent and Quansah on one side, and obviously to flip that on the other side. Yeah, you see where I'm going with this. It's going to be interesting to see how that works. I think personally, I'd be interested to see whether we start with Quansah actually, and whether we just sort of go, you know what, no, I'll double down, or whether Konate will actually get another stint in the side. The way that Konate impacted the side basically pushed the midfield down the field a little bit. I kind of wonder if that was more of also a tactical adjustment from Slot, whether it was not only Konate that enabled that, but also the fact that the midfield just went, right, there's space there, we'll go there. That kind of worked. And then I'll be interested to see whether Quansah, McAllister, I know McAllister probably will start, and then up front, whether we do go for Jota again. I'm very much down for the idea of going for Jota. Probably Diaz and Salah either side of that, a midfield of Szoboszlai, the runner, Gravenberch, the controller, and then the kind of patroller filler inner at the moment is McAllister, and I think Slot and McAllister both acknowledged there's not quite like the right dynamic there yet. They can get that right. And then of course in the back line, Trent, I'm going to go Konate, Virgil, Robertson, and of course Alisson, who seems to be doing a good job of not necessarily adapting his game incredibly, but changing his game, coming out a little bit more, getting involved in the play and creating the numerical supremacy that Liverpool need in that part of the pitch. We're understanding the basics of slot ball now. And I think what's interesting about that coming back to Anfield is going to learn what to support in Slot's game. We understood a lot of what to support in Klopp's game. We knew when to clap, we knew when to appreciate what the players were doing outside of just the hard work that we observed. And we also knew that especially with Liverpool, there were going to be some fundamentals that we observed and enjoyed, but we also really enjoyed what Klopp enjoyed, because Klopp would G up the crowd in the early days and go, that's what I'm looking for, and the crowd would therefore react. Of course, I think they're probably going to go a similar way to the way that a lot of other teams are, go wide and then come back in, and I think Liverpool are going to try and do that counter-attack from control thing, and obviously try and control the game against Brentford. I don't think Klopp and Slot are actually particularly comparable. I think their movement of the ball is so different, but obviously the intensity and the control they're looking for through intensity is still there. It's just what they do when they win the ball back, how the press is done, that is slightly varied. And I think for that reason, I'd kind of like to compare what we did last season. Obviously, I think we beat Brentford 4-1 last season and had a relatively, it felt like a much more nervy game than I think I remember it being. But in the end, we broke through. But really in the second half, we kind of came into our own. And it was kind of one of those nervy, annoying first halves. And actually, I think Brentford are one of those teams who go, right, we'll go away, we'll do something really annoying for this opposition, and we're going to try and just get in their faces. They had a relatively good first week against Crystal Palace, and actually, I think there might be not an improved team, because not having Tony is probably a real disadvantage. But I do think of Buemo, I do think the rest of that team are capable of matching up against Liverpool, especially with the tactical adjustments that you'll see someone in the Brentford's situation make. And I think, someone like Thomas Frank is obviously a football genius. I think Brentford overall are always a challenge in the Premier League. And I think there's a lot of cliches around them, because they are kind of in that middle ground where it's like, will they give up? Or will we have to keep pressing and making it difficult for the full 90 minutes? At Trent, I'm going to finish on here. I know a lot of people have been talking about contract situations, all those kind of things. I think the main thing to focus on right now with Trent is he's fit almost seamlessly into this slot system. People are always going to attack the wings against the slot system. So I think when people go, they're trying to exploit Trent, it's a mixture of Trent and that slot system, I think. So there's kind of like a bit of a payoff to risking it with Trent. And I think obviously he fits very well into that midfield. It's nice to see him in the midfield and kind of distributing, getting the pass before the pass, I think twice in that last game. It's great to see him on the same side as Salah Szoboszlai. That's an elite combination with a lot of movement from Szoboszlai. Again, I expect like a breakout season here from Szoboszlai, and that's going to enable a lot from Trent, because the movement ahead of him is going to push players back, give him a lot more space to adapt into. There's almost like runners in an NFL style there. And then the movement and the nous of Salah's combination players improved yet again under Slot, and the adjustments count as an improvement for me, because you're making the opposition work something new out. And then I think along with that, there's also always that switch ball onto Diaz, and that works really, really well. I am fascinated by what people make of Gravenberch. Obviously, Slot has addressed some of this in the press conference. I think it doesn't look like we're going to sign anyone in any of these positions. We've obviously let quite a few people go. I was really interested to see that we let Vandenberg go. It was really interesting. Sanderberg, we didn't even have him. I think it's really interesting that we obviously let Carvalho go, and then we also obviously let Bobby Clark go off to RB as well. So there's like this combination, I think, of Liverpool just actually needing to move on some of the youth. We also let Blair go. We're probably going to let someone else. It looks like Bajcetic may be on his way, which I think is interesting. I'm kind of interested to see why. He did look a little off the pace in pre-season. He didn't seem to overly dominate that position. I think they were looking for someone to come in and it's me now kind of thing. It feels like that's been Gravenberch that's done that. And I think Slot made a really good point. Other players around him played well in order to enable that. But also then he has to play well in that situation. There's probably been a lot of tape watched of people like Zubimendi. There's probably a lot of tape watched of probably Matt Zweifer, who a couple of weeks ago Liverpool were said to be scrambling for. And then, of course, I think there's also been a lot of a Gertruda watch as well, probably from Trent, but also from Gravenberch. And I think we're going to see Slot play a fairly consistent team up until the point where we almost forced to rotate when Champions League comes around and we have games back to back. And we're going to see about what the intensity and training shift is from someone like Slot in comparison to someone like Klopp. Obviously, There's very little to go on at this point. The pre-season at this point seems a million miles before that Ipswich game, and yet it seemed so close to that Ipswich game just a week ago. Ipswich really informed us. I'm kind of worried about this first half, second half thing coming up again. We didn't really play all that well in the first half. I think Anfield's looking for a reaction. I'm really excited to hear You'll Never Walk Alone. I'm really excited to get back there. It's obviously a bigger crowd, probably a full house this week. And I think Liverpool and Anfield will not put up with a mediocre first half performance followed by some slot adjustments. But what is going to be interesting about that is, are those slot adjustments going to become part of the way that we support? Are we going to be like, okay, the first half we do kind of jab, 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 not great punch technique, but we jab, 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 and then in the second half we start swinging and maybe we've assessed the side a little bit. We won't always get the luxury of that. I think we probably won't get the luxury of that at Old Trafford, but against a few other sides where they're probably nervous as to how Liverpool hit them, and Salah seems so alive to that, and so does Diaz, I'm going to be interested to see what happens. Interesting split last week on the Diaz thing. Some people saying they thought Diaz played badly. Some people saying they thought Diaz played well. I think Diaz took a lot of risks and some of them didn't pay off, but I actually thought he played relatively well. I quite enjoyed watching his game. So I'm interested to see what you guys think in terms of how Liverpool set up. Let me know your starting 11s and who you think is going to be key in this game. And of course, I'll be back with assessment on Sunday, probably live from Anfield. And then I'll be back again on Monday with a full recap of what is going on at Liverpool, hopefully. Anyway, appreciate you guys. If you haven't already hit subscribe, then please do that. We're going to be starting memberships later this weekend, probably early next week. Let me know what you think a good price is for that. If you would rather have like a low price, high price, mid price. And yeah, if anyone does want to become a member, please let me know in the comments below, because it's the kind of thing where I don't want to appear to be just kind of asking for money for something for free, and I'd really love to hear what you guys think. And of course, I'd love support for the channel. Makes it easier to make all this stuff. Appreciate you guys, and I'll chat to you in a while. Much love.